What's it worth right now knowing this easement's running through it?
Salvage value. The house and everything is just it's it's worthless. I am very disillusioned with what the American dream is here. When this all started, I was 66 years old. Now I'm 76 years old, and they're still delaying everything that they can to not take this to court.
This is 74-year-old Hamid, and his whole life just got flipped on its head by something buried in the ground.
It goes through the pool, it goes through the hot tub, it goes through the screened in, it goes through the kitchen, it goes through the bedroom.
He paid close to $1 million for his dream home, but after 11 years of fighting the city in court, the jury sent him home with nothing. You gotta see how this man got played. Let me put you on real quick, because this story right here is one of the wildest property cases you'll ever hear about. And the man at the center of it has been through more in one lifetime than most people could even imagine. His name is Hamid Salahuddin, and at 74 years old, this man has lived a whole life before we even get to the part where his dream got taken from him. He belongs to an ethnic group called the Tartars, a Turkic people with roots in parts of the old Soviet Union and Central Asia. As a young man, him and his family were captured and locked up during the Korean War era, and he remembers exactly how long he was held.
Hamid and his family were members of an ethnic group called the Tartars and were captured and imprisoned during the Korean War.
We were held prisoner for 3 years, 7 months, 28 days.
After he got out, he eventually made his way to the United States, met his wife Penelope, started a family, ran businesses, and chased what he thought was the American dream like everybody else who comes to this country looking for a fresh start. Then in June of 2001, that dream felt like it was finally complete. Hamid and his wife found this beautiful piece of property out in Odessa, Florida, sitting on about 10 acres at 15,101 Racetrack Road. The house was built back in 1982 with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a pool, a hot tub, and a screened porch. And the property backed up to about 600 acres of county land, filled with deer, bobcats, raccoons, and coyotes walking through the trees. The man literally felt like God sent him to this place. They paid $350,000 and bought it straight from the previous owner. Now, they didn't get a survey, and they didn't get a full inspection either. But why would they when the title search came back completely clean, with no problems, encumbrances, or anything on the deed that would make anybody think twice about this place? As far as the paperwork was concerned, this property was good to go. Penelope opened up a daycare on the property, and for years that house was full of kids, full of laughter, and full of life. For 14 years, that's the life they lived out there, raising their kids, running the daycare, and enjoying the peace of their dream property.
This place was full of life, and it was a great place to raise children.
This house on Racetrack Road was once a happy home and the site of a thriving daycare.
They even went back in 2007 and refinanced the home through Fidelity National Title Insurance. And that second title search came back the exact same way as the first one, with no encumbrances or easements showing up anywhere. They even got issued a title insurance policy worth around $350,000, just in case something ever popped up later down the line. Spoiler alert, something was about to pop up that would change everything. Now here's the part of the story you gotta really pay attention to, because the timeline matters. While Hamid and his wife were out there living their peaceful life on this property, there was something underneath the ground that nobody on the property had any idea existed, and it had been sitting there since before the house was even built. All the way back in 1930, almost 100 years ago, the city of St. Petersburg got a 50-foot wide easement granted to them for a 36-inch water pipe that ran about 26 miles, carrying drinking water from the Kosmy water treatment plant all the way to the city of St. Petersburg, cutting through hundreds of properties along the route. And then in 1962, the city added a second pipe, this one a whole 48 inches wide, sitting in the same corridor. Together, those 2 pipes carry around 28 million gallons of water every single day, feeding drinking water to about 360,000 people in St. Petersburg.
The easement on Hamid's property was granted in 1930 for a 36-inch water main, going from the Kosmy water treatment plant to the city of St. Petersburg, 26 miles away, crossing hundreds of properties. A second 48-inch water main was added in 1962. The pipes provide 28 million gallons of water a day to 360,000 St. Pete residents.
We are talking heavy-duty, high-pressure water lines here, not your regular neighborhood plumbing. So the real question is, how does a homeowner go 14 whole years living on his property without knowing that two massive water pipes are running right underneath his house? And the answer to that question is where this whole thing gets shady. The city got the original easement granted to them in 1930, but they didn't actually file it in the county records until 1954. That's a 24-year gap right there. 24 whole years where this easement existed, but wasn't recorded anywhere that a buyer could find it. And during all those years, the land got cut up, sold off, transferred, and split between different owners. But none of those deeds carried any mention of the easement. So by the time Hamid bought the house decades later in 2001, that easement was, in the words of one title expert, lost in time. Then, in 2015, after 14 years of peace and quiet on that property, the city showed up out of nowhere.
What is that?
They say it's a blow-off valve for the pipes.
A blow-off valve for two giant pressurized water pipes, sitting about 50 feet from his house and hidden under thick brush. Hamid had no clue any of this was even there. The city crew showed him a map of the easement and explained where the pipes were running. And the moment this man looked at that map, his whole world cracked in half. His first reaction was straight-up disbelief. So he brought in a surveyor to come out and mark exactly where the 50-foot easement ran on his property, using flags, stakes, and bright spray paint to show the boundaries. But Hamid didn't stop at the surveyor markings. This man went a whole step further and bought roofing shingles, painted them bright pink, and laid them out on the ground all along the path of the easement.
So why the Pepto-Bismol colored paint?
Because so it would stand out, so people could see it from the air.
He wanted the whole world to see what they did to his property. Anybody flying over, driving past, or looking down from a drone, he wanted them to see exactly where these pipes cut through his home.
It goes through the pool, it goes through the hot tub, it goes through the screened in, it goes through the kitchen, it goes through the bedroom.
About 8 of his 10 acres are swampland that you can't even build on. So the house, the pool, the hot tub, all of that sat on the only 2 usable acres he had. And these pipes ran straight through the middle of all of it. That's the situation this man found himself in. And according to Zillow, that house was supposedly worth close to $1 million before all this came out. But once he found out what was running underneath the property, the number on Zillow didn't mean anything anymore.
On Zillow, it says this piece of property is worth close to $1 million. What's it worth right now, knowing this easement's running through it?
Salvage value, the house and everything is just, it's worthless.
So in 2016, with the title insurance company backing him up, Hamid and his wife filed a lawsuit against the city of St. Petersburg in Pinellas County. Their argument was simple. The city failed to properly record the easement for 24 years. The property got sold a bunch of times during that gap, and by the time he bought it in 2001, there was no reasonable way for him to know what was buried underneath. To back this up, his side brought in a title expert named Penny Light, who went all the way back to 1920, searching through the property records. She found that the land had changed hands about 10 times since the original easement was granted, and not a single one of those deeds mentioned the easement. In her own words, the easement was simply lost in time, and even she, an experienced expert doing the search herself, could not find it. If a professional couldn't find it, how was Hamid supposed to? The city pushed back hard, though. Their argument was that the easement got recorded in 1954, which meant it ran with the land from that point on. They also pointed at that blow-off valve sitting 50 feet from the house, claiming that any basic survey or inspection would have caught it. In their court filings, the city's lawyer wrote that even the most basic due diligence would have discovered the recorded easement, and they even tried to suggest that the whole lawsuit was just an attempt to stall foreclosure proceedings. Speaking of foreclosure, life kept getting worse for Hamid during all of this. In 2020, his wife Penelope got diagnosed with cancer, and she had to close down her daycare. Just a few months later, she passed away. That same year, the property went into foreclosure, which put the whole lawsuit on pause. So, now this man was a widower, dealing with grief, fighting financial problems, and stuck with a house he couldn't even sell because nobody in their right mind would buy a property with 2 giant water pipes running through the kitchen. The city offered him $25,000 in mediation, hastened to make the whole thing go away. And of course, he turned it down.
Hammett said the city made a lowball offer.
In mediation, they offered me $25,000.
His home was supposedly worth close to $1 million, and they wanted to act like $25,000 was gonna fix everything they did to him. Meanwhile, a real estate attorney named Andy Lyons, who wasn't even part of the case but reviewed the records for the news investigation, explained exactly why this kind of situation is so dangerous for regular buyers. When everything works the right way, a utility easement gets recorded and follows the deed forever after that, so every new owner can see it before they buy.
We asked real estate attorney Andy Lyons, who was not associated with the case, to review documents from the court case in 2023.
So what normally happens is the county will put in a utility and record an easement. Every time that property transfers after that, the easement follows the deed.
During the 24 years before the easement was recorded, properties were divided and sold with no record of the easement.
And there's no way any of the homeowners after that would know just by looking at their deeds.
But because the recording was 24 years late in this case, anybody who bought the land during those 24 years got a deed with no mention of the easement, and that must followed every transfer after that.
Properties were divided and sold with no record of the easement.
And there's no way any of the homeowners after that would know just by looking at their deeds.
And this is miles and miles of these properties.
Miles of these properties.
In Hillsborough and Pinellas counties.
That means Hamid is probably not the only homeowner along that 26-mile stretch of pipeline sitting on top of this exact situation without even knowing it. The Hillsborough County Appraiser's Office even responded to a records request saying they could not find that easement on any Hillsborough deed, which tells you how deep this problem goes. And on top of all that, there's a safety concern that nobody really wants to talk about. These pipes are almost 100 years old now, and they run under constant high pressure every single day.
These are 36, 48-inch water mains.
Under pressure, that is a full, hard flow of water constantly through those pipelines. So if there's any kind of rupture in a pipe that is now nearly 100 years old, that's going to have potentially catastrophic effects.
After almost 11 years of fighting, Hamid's case finally went to a jury trial in Clearwater, Florida in April of 2026. And by this point, the man had already been through enough for 10 lifetimes. His wife was gone, his daycare was closed, his house was basically unsellable, and he was hoping the jury would finally see what he had been screaming about for over a decade. His lawyer, Jacqueline Sims Petrides, made the situation real plain for the jury. She wanted them to feel the weight of what was running under this man's house, with 28 million gallons of water every single day gushing through those pipes right under his living room. Then Penny Light, the title expert, took the stand and walked through her whole search process, explaining how she went all the way back to 1920, how the land had changed hands 10 different times, and how that easement was nowhere to be found in any of the deeds. Hamid himself took the stand too, and he described what the property looked like to him back in 2001. He talked about the deer, the bobcats, the coyotes, the quiet woods, and the place where he raised his family in peace. Then he talked about the day in 2015 when the city walked onto his land and his whole world fell apart in front of him. On the other side, the city's attorney Joseph Kelly kept hammering one simple message the entire trial: due diligence. He argued that if it had done even basic homework, like getting a proper survey or inspection, he would have spotted the blow-off valve or the maps that showed exactly where the easement was running. And he kept asking how Hamid could possibly miss something sitting 50 feet from his house. The jury went away to think it through, and they came back about 4 hours later with their verdict. The city won. The easement and pipes stay, and Hamid walked out of that courtroom with nothing. The jury basically said that even though the easement was recorded late, Hamid still failed to perform a proper inspection that would have revealed the city's equipment on his land. So 11 years of fighting, all the pain, all the money spent on legal fees, all the personal loss this man went through, and the result was nothing. No relocation of the pipes, no compensation, no damages. Just go home and live with it. After the verdict, Hamid stood there outside the courthouse and gave one of the most heartbreaking quotes you'll ever hear in a property case. Nothing has changed. 11 years I've been fighting this. It's still status quo. When the reporter asked if he felt any sense of justice from all this, his answer was real short. No, not at all. Not at all.
Bought what he believed was his dream home.
I am very disillusioned with what the American dream is here.
His lawyers are looking into a possible appeal that would likely go up to Florida's 2nd District Court of Appeal. But as of right now, nothing has changed. The water pipes are still sitting under his house, the blow-off valve is still in his yard, and the situation is exactly the same as it was the day the city walked onto his land back in 2015.
Hammond says in 2015, city workers came to check on equipment he didn't know was on his property.
What is that?
They say it's a blow-off valve for the pipes.
Now here's the part that's really going to get you, because Hamid is not the only person in Florida this has happened to. There's another case called the Breinig case in Martin County, where a couple bought their property and later found out there was an unrecorded conservation easement on their land that limited what they could do with it. They sued the county, and in their case, the homeowners actually won the fight. The county settled with them back in 2015, basically agreeing that you can't force an unrecorded easement on buyers who had no way of knowing about it. So why did one homeowner win and the other one lose, when both cases were about hidden easements that weren't properly recorded? The answer comes down to one word right here. Notice, in the Breinig case, there was nothing physical on the property to tip off the buyers that something was wrong. No visible structure, pipe sticking out, or valve in the yard. So the court agreed they had no notice, and the easement couldn't be forced on them. But in Hamid's case, even though the recording was a whole mess, the city pointed straight at that blow-off valve sitting 50 feet from the house. They argued that if he had done a proper survey, he would have seen that valve and asked questions about it. The jury bought that argument completely, and under Florida law, a buyer is treated like they have notice of anything a reasonable inspection or survey would have shown them. So if you are about to buy a home, here's how you protect yourself, because this could happen to anybody. First thing, never skip the survey. A regular title search alone is not enough, no matter how clean it comes back, because hidden easements like this one don't always show up in the deed. Pay for a proper land survey and let a professional physically walk the property and map out what's actually there. Second thing, always get a physical inspection of the land, not just the house. Walk the entire property yourself and look for anything that seems off. Pipes sticking out the ground, valves hidden in the brush, manholes, worn paths through the grass, any markings on trees. All of that is a sign that something might be underneath the land that you need to ask questions about. Third thing, ask the seller and the city directly about any easements or utility lines that might run through the property and get the answers in writing. Don't just rely on what shows up in the title search. Call the city utility department yourself and ask if there's any infrastructure on or near the property. And the last thing, make sure your title insurance policy is solid and you understand what it actually covers. A lot of people buy these policies thinking they protect against everything, but the fine print can leave you exposed when something like this happens. And you don't want to find out the hard way like Hamid did, because at the end of the day, the system gave this man no warning. The title company missed it, the city dragged it out for 11 years, and the jury still told him it was his fault for not catching something nobody else could find. One blow-off valve hidden under brush, 50 feet from his house, ended up costing him his dream home, his peace of mind.
When this all started, I was 66 years old. Now I'm 76 years old, and they're still delaying everything that they can to not take this to court.
Hamid's health has declined in the past 2 years.
Last July, I had a cardiac arrest, a widowmaker.
His daughter performed CPR and saved his life, but Hamid spent a week in a coma. He believes the city could easily provide a solution.
Either move the pipes away from the house or build a house away from the pipes.
11 years of his life, and everything he believed the American dream was supposed to be. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment below and let me know what you would have done in his position. And if you want to see more cases like this, where regular people get caught up in something they never saw coming, click on one of the cards on your screen. We will see you in the next one.